This is Majo John Madden in my hotel room in Akumal, Mexico. The hotel is El Ultimo Maya. It's the Mayan Riviera. And I want to do a talk about letting go. Letting go is maybe the central theme of all human lives. It's really what the spiritual quest is all about, is how to let go. The Buddhists call it detachment, which is kind of a esoteric term, but for me, letting go captures it. Life has had me on a path to learn to become an expert at letting go, really over the course of my whole life. But I want to give some particular markers where I made big step changes in terms of learning how to let go. In 2004, I was in Chicago. I'm a Chicagoan and I'm very identified with Chicago. I love my town. And I was in the throes of having been taught to believe that I had bipolar disorder, serious psychiatric disability, being a psychologist myself. And in the 60s, in the late 60s, when I was in grad school, we were student radicals and we rejected diagnoses. My whole career was based on telling people, I have to give you a diagnosis for insurance, but it's not who you are. Don't think of this as who you are. It's just a label we're giving you. But I had a perfect storm of terrible experiences in my early 40s that left me in shambles and got led to the psychiatrist, and they gave me the label, and I was in so much emotional pain that I took it. I basically said, give me your stupid label, I'll try to wear it. If you have any kind of medication that can soften my pain, I want to try. And that began a 30-year spate of hard times. It was, you had a bad day. I had a bad 30 years. I had a bad 30 years of believing that I had mental illness and taking horrid drugs that never helped much and had all kinds of terrible side effects. So in 2004, living on the south side of Chicago in Hyde Park, right next to Barack Obama's neighborhood of Kenwood, I was suicidal. I was very seriously suicidal. I was planning my suicide. And at the last minute, life said, start over, try, go someplace. My son had given me the advice once. Dad, because I had made a very serious suicide attempt, my son had said, drop everything. Go someplace you've never lived, where you don't know people, do work you've never done before, start over. Brilliant advice from, he was at that time in his early 20s, I think. And I did it. I left Chicago, my home. I hadn't lived there my whole life, but I kept returning there. In 2004, I hopped on a Greyhound bus with a roll-on duffel bag that my men's group had bought for me, $200 in my pocket, to head for Asheville, North Carolina, which I knew of through my old girlfriend who had been doing work there and loved it. In the hopes that I could start over, and I almost did not make it. Asheville's been in the news lately because of the terrible Hurricane Helene storms that decimated that town. It will probably never, in terms of its reputation, recover. It's been, for a long time, the go-to place to retire in the Southeast, on the spine of the Blue Ridge Mountains. But it's been so devastated, people are not going to go there to retire anymore. And it's going to take a long time for that area to recover at all. But in 2004 was the last time that when they do the stories about Hurricane Helene's effects on Nashville, they talk about the 2004 hurricane-related storms. And I moved there in between two of them. My friend Gretchen said, don't go to Asheville now. It's been battered by storms. It's got all kinds of flooding. And I said, They're my new neighbors. I'm going. I got to go. I'll ride out the next storm with them. And I did. And that storm included, at the height of that second hurricane-related storm, going to the mountains with the intention of jumping off a cliff. Because after 10 days there, I ran out of steam and just wanted to go. But I didn't know that the mountains around Asheville did not have cliffs. No, the worst I could have done would have thrown myself down in the woods and get cut and scraped. And while the winds and the rain drove me out of the woods, and it was hard to get out of there even, but I survived and spent 16 years in Asheville. And for those 16 years, thought it was the place to be, which most of us in Asheville did. Artsy, creative, so much music, incredible old Art Deco architecture. The downtown of Asheville is a jewel. And I had a good life there in many ways, even though that whole, until the last many months there, I was continuing to suffer from the bipolar diagnosis and drugs and many hospitalizations. When the COVID hit Asheville in March of 2020, my next huge shift in terms of letting go of a place, because I got a call, text message from a friend out in the mountains who had been a housemate of mine, and she said, Asheville's horrible right now. It's shut down, it's COVID infested. Out in the mountains, they had the belief that COVID wasn't going to get there in March of 2020. She said, I've got a walk-in basement apartment, it's free. Come on out to the mountains. So I dropped my life, my 16 years that I had created an incredible network of friends, reputation as a performance poet, a life of going out to the clubs and dancing. Dropped it, moved to the mountains, me and my chubby little Chihuahua Pancho, and got super happy and never went back to Asheville. Never went back. After 3 months of staying in my friend's apartment, bought a camper van and traveled for 4 years. So totally letting go of Asheville. After a year of rambling around the high mountains with our second spring out there, my chubby Chihuahua and I both got violently allergic to some new bush that came out in the national forest out there. So at that point, after a year of being in those high mountains, I kind of knew them better than almost anybody from the way I had explored it all in my camper van. I had to let go of that and implemented a plan I thought at that point I was heading to the Southwest, which is a place that I always had loved. 4 years on the road, along the way, I shifted that plan after swimming in a man-made lake outside of Louisville, Kentucky, where my son lives. And I spent the whole summer of 21 trying to repair our relationship. He was in his 40s. And had to let go of that because nothing worked. After adoring me for his whole young life, he had adopted his mom's story that I had ruined their lives by letting go of that marriage, which was the bravest and strongest and wisest thing I ever did in my life, was to get out of that marriage. But it meant letting go of thinking of myself as a good husband. Tried so hard to be a good husband. And I had finally to say, if this makes me bad, I guess I'm bad. Call me bad, because I'm out of here. So 2021, I left those high mountains and began my travels through the Southwest. And along the way, swimming in a man-made lake in Louisville, said, you're so happy in the water. You've always thought of, 15 years ago, you came really close to moving to Mexico. It had been 10 years at that point. Go, do it. So my vision shifted to getting to Mexico. I've spent 17 months in Mexico, and along the way, I'm going to double back. big letting go before leaving Asheville was I dropped the whole idea of being bipolar. A friend, I was working as a cashier in a Whole Foods style grocery store, and one of my favorite clients said, I don't think you ever had bipolar disorder. There's a book I've been reading called The Stormy Search for Self by Stanislav Grof, very famous transpersonal psychologist, the overlap between spirituality and psychology. And he says, in our society, when things fall apart, and there's been another beautiful book by Pema Chodron called When Things Fall Apart. When your life falls apart, that's a chance to reinvent yourself and find out that you're more than your work. And I had a brilliant career as a psychologist and a management consultant. You're more even than family. I was also influenced as soon as I got to Asheville by a spiritual teacher named Ramana Maharshi, who would say, who you are, ask yourself, don't ask how to become more spiritual. Ask, who am I? That's the only question that really matters. So in Asheville, on June 26th of 2019, I had a spiritual experience where life said, drop it. Drop the history, drop that identity. You know why you're suffering right now. There's a couple of very concrete things you can do that will make you much happier. Get out of this senior living place, subsidized housing that is practical, but it's not you at all. Do a couple of very concrete things and you'll be fine. And I never, since that day, have ever genuinely been unhappy again. I dropped the history, dropped the whole way of running my life because the voice for spirit came in and took over and has coached me ever since. So back to 2020, 2021, heading southwest, getting to Mexico. Along the way to Mexico, I stopped 6 weeks in Chicago, my hometown, and looked for an old girlfriend, Anita. We had had such a sweet relationship and discovered that she was in Cozumel, Mexico. So my fantasy shifted to, okay, Cozumel. If I can make it to Cozumel, Anita could help me set up a new life there. I didn't have romantic fantasies except kind of. I couldn't avoid them because we had been so sweet together. But I knew she was happily married and that was not going to happen. Got to Cozumel on June 12th of this year and looked up Anita. Got in the cab, gave them directions to where her office was, and was so excited to see her that I lost my phone in the cab. I lost my phone in the cab. And she wasn't there. Her assistant called her up and said, she's going to call you. She never did. She never did. And I've heard about her since that she's doing fine. But I had to let go of the whole fantasy of this woman is going to help me set up a life here. So that created some chaos. That was 4 months ago. In those 4 months, I've spent a lot of time in Cozumel. Really worked on the notion that I'm meant to stay there. This is going to be my home even without Anita. But also spent a whole lot of time in Playa del Carmen across the bay, 30-minute ferry ride. And that's a spectacular town, spectacular time. Such an exciting, the hub of social life in Mexico, the nightlife scene in Mexico, Playa del Carmen, what Acapulco used to be in the 1940s to 60s. So the excitement and fun junkie in me went crazy in Playa del Carmen, but I finally had to realize this is not so good for you either. Cozumel, you don't like the cruise traffic and the smug Republicans who have settled there. Playa del Carmen isn't working. This is October September 18th, I left Cozumel and had read online about Akumal. Little, and I'd heard about it a year before, actually, and once upon a time I thought, why is Akumal calling to me? And it had much smaller resort area in the Riviera Maya, 30 minutes south of Playa del Carmen. And I've been here for about a month. And it's so clearly where I'm meant to be. I'm so happy. There's a tiny little pueblo, and across the highway is a big resort area. And both places are making me incredibly happy. It's famous for snorkeling with the turtles because the tortugas, the sea turtles, feed on the grasses in the bay, and that's where I was swimming yesterday, where I swim almost every day. And the mural in my hotel room, I want to give you this visual, it's an underwater motif. Check that out. Beautiful. Beautiful. So I've had some more chances to let go. I've been an Apple iPhone guy for so many years, and you know Apple people, we are like diehards. But my iPhone was stolen. And here in Mexico, it's super expensive to buy iPhones. And I had to let go of that whole part of my identity, and I'm using an Android. Oh, and learning that it's a pretty nice phone and about a fifth what I would have paid for an iPhone. Yesterday, I talked with, after months of trying to get through to Google, because when I lost my phone, I lost access to my Google account. They tried to verify me with the new phone by sending a message to the old phone. I've not been able to get into my Google account. And with that, my YouTube channel with hundreds of videos, I haven't had access to it. Finally, yesterday, I did get through to a chat agent at Google. They couldn't help me. She was great. She was heroic. We spent probably 20 to 30 minutes on the line. She couldn't get me in. I thought, not only has that been my career, my YouTube channel, but I've been telling people, drop me a note on my YouTube channel. That's how we'll stay in touch, including Anna in Playa del Carmen, the girl I'm most fixated on these days. That was my last chance to find her, was she had left me a bunch of messages there. So yesterday afternoon, in the veranda of this hotel, talking with the Google agent, I had to face the fact that I think that YouTube channel's gone. I've started a new one. This is going to be posted on my Juanito, my new apodo in Mexico, Johnny, which I love. New name. Humble little channel. Just a few videos, just a few followers. I'm never going to get access to that old YouTube channel. It was crushing. It was crushing. I was devastated. I was dazed. And I said, let's go to the beach. My plan all along was a sleepy little beach community in Mexico where I could swim every day. This is a sleepy little pueblo here. It's a 30-minute walk down to the beach. I walked fast and did it in 22 minutes and got so happy. Happy. The happiest I've been. Every time I let go, I get happier. It's our work. We don't get to take anything with us. So this is an infomercial for letting go. When life gives you a chance to let go of an identity, let go of a place, let go of a relationship, let go of a phone. I've had 2 camper vans stolen in my 4 years of travel. Each of them was devastating. Well, the first one went belly up. It just died, and I had 3 hours to get my stuff out of it. The second one was stolen, and I had no chance. I was left with the clothes on my back. And every one of them has worked. Every step towards trusting, turning it over, letting go has made my life better. And what I realized as I was floating in the bay yesterday was, you're the happiest you've ever been. You've been terminally happy for 5 years since your spiritual experience. Today is the happiest and peacefulest, the quietest you've ever been. None of it's a mistake. None of it's a mistake. There is some hand, I don't know what God is. I call God spirit, life. I don't understand what it is. It's not a guy. It's not the Christian God. Out here, the Mayans have goddesses. They've got the female principle right up there with the male principle. And this area is steeped in Mayan spirituality, which is these days being really valued and revered in Mexico after hundreds of years of oppression. I think I'm in the right place at the right time, in the right hotel room, with the right stupid Android phone, and the right small number of subscribers on my YouTube channel. It's just right. Thank you. Have a good day.